ringing sound that you will perceive when you're in a very quiet area. Some people say this is an auditory illusion brought about by the ear's inability to detect frequencies below the threshold of the human senses. This is completely wrong. That ringing covers up something else altogether. If you're quick, patient, and maybe a little lucky, you'll be able to hear past the ringing. What you will hear are voices whispering to each other. They will silence themselves quickly, but with practice, you'll be more adept at catching and interpreting what they are saying. You will hear things of the past, the present, and the future. However, you must be careful, because there is no such thing as a voice without a body. And when you start noticing them, they'll start noticing you.
Evening, dreamers and night screamers. This is another installment of the Flatland Chronicles. I'm your host, Idiom Infinitus. I'm alone in the studio tonight because my partner in crime is actually out doing research and collecting all kinds of other goodies for the next shows to come. So hopefully, and almost assuredly, these will get better and better as they go along. Down here in the south side flats of Pittsburgh, this is another episode of the Flatland Chronicles. I'm just going to go right into the story tonight, just to get this out there. It's called Mommy Ego, and it's by an unknown author, writer. So this person submitted this story, and it seems to be pretty creepy, because I read it, and I'm creeped out. So here we go. Mommy Ego. I grew up in a little town called Austin. When I was a kid, my aunt used to watch me after school along with her son and my little brother. We were the typical troublemaking kids who always went out on our little adventures. There was something horribly wrong with not just my aunt's house, though, but the whole neighborhood. I remember like it happened earlier today, and I'll never forget the things that happened to us back then. The start of everything was my younger cousin Mike telling me and my little brother about this woman he called Mommy Ego, and how she would follow him wherever we went. I used to think it was all made up and that he just wanted attention. One day we were all watching TV after school, and my aunt had gone out to do something. She was super proactive in the schools and all. Well, a commercial for one of those sink-attachable water filters came on, and a woman asked, "Would you like a refreshing glass of water?" As soon as that question was asked, every sink in the house turned on all the way. Cupboards flung open, and that was it. Needless to say, we were totally bewildered and creeped out. Mike just sat there like it was nothing out of the ordinary. I got up and turned the sink off in the kitchen, and I walked into the bathroom to turn the sink off in there too. But when I looked up, I noticed the small barred window. There were snakes, at least 10, winding around the bars, sliding up the glass as if they were trying to get in. I freaked out and called Mike's dad. He told us to stay inside, and he went to the side of the house with a garden hoe and killed the snakes. Eventually, my mom came over to pick me and my brother up, and that was the end of the day. Sometime later, the three of us were out and about in the neighborhood exploring the creek that was nearby. One of our favorite places to go was the bridge that crossed over the creek. There were dozens of Mexican free-tail bats that lived under there, and it was fun for us to go down there and try to look at them. The smell was horrible. As we slid down the cement drainage ramp down into the clearing the water makes when the creek floods, we saw something dart off in some of the bushes on the other side of the bridge, under where all the bats were. We were curious, so we ran along the water line under the bridge, terrified that a bat would bite one of us, so we were definitely in a hurry. As we went further down the creek into a brushy area that seemed very out of sight from the road, we noticed something in the water. It was a dead lamb. Well, the skeleton of one anyway. Inside its rib cage, there was a snake coiled up underwater. It was so strange. We freaked out and ran back home. This is where it starts to get serious. One weekend we had come over to spend the night. Mike's older sisters were in charge of babysitting us. We were in the age area of about 11, 13. Everything was normal until around bedtime. Mike said something about mommy ego being mad at him. We shrugged it off as usual. About 2 a.m. we heard a scratching noise from the other side of the bedroom door. They were very slow and deep sounding. We were all huddled up in the same room on some bunk beds when the scratching noises started getting louder. We all got up on the top bunk together. The scratching stopped, and for a minute I was relieved until we heard the soft voice of a woman. It was distorted and hard to understand what she was saying. It almost like she was singing a lullaby. We were dead quiet, trying to listen to what was happening, with the occasional whisper from one of us asking, "What did she say?" or something like that. The cabinets in the kitchen started opening and closing. We could hear the dishes falling to the floor, and then we suddenly heard Mike's sister screaming. We all ran out of his room across the hall into his sister's room, where they were both hiding in bed. At this point, we were all scared and didn't know what to do. The closet doors in the bedroom started opening and closing over and over, just like the cabinets in the kitchen were. The lights were blinking on and off, along with the TVs, the water turning on and off, and everything seemed to be out of control. Since the doors in the girls' room were being insane, we didn't stay in there long. We all ran into the living room. We were all terrified. We all got on the couch together, threw blankets over our heads, and just sat there. All the doors slamming and whatnot stopped. It was somewhat quiet again, so we got up and looked around as a group. Mike's bedroom door had deep gashes in it, like someone had taken a chisel to it and carved out the door along the grain. Wood chips were everywhere. They were long, flimsy strips of wood, at least a foot long. It was unexplainable. The house was a total wreck from things falling out of cabinets, off shelves. However, we came to notice something in Mike's room had moved an inch, save the carvings in the door. We all piled up in there for the night. Before we got ready to try and go back to sleep, we decided to let the dog in to protect us. Her name was Lucky. She was a big white lab. We locked ourselves in Mike's room, and just as we were settling down with some movies on his little TV, the power went out. Everything was quiet again. We heard the woman's voice coming from outside the door, accompanied by what sounded like footsteps. Every so often we would hear a thump getting louder and louder as it got closer to the outside of the bedroom. Terrified, we all curled up side by side watching the door. The scratching started briefly, then stopped. Lucky started to whimper, and she crawled under the bed, which did nothing to boost our confidence. The doorknob started to jiggle gently, and then more violently in what seemed to be frustration. Something started pounding on the other side of the door as the doorknob shook more and more. Suddenly, the door flung wide open, so hard the doorknob punched a hole in the wall. Then everything was still. It had stopped. We all said a prayer, closed the door, and eventually fell back to sleep. This was not the only incident at this house or one of the areas surrounding the neighborhood. Frankly, I get the chills recalling the memories, and writing them creeps me out. I enjoy hearing other experiences, knowing I'm not totally insane. We got blamed by her parents for what happened to the house, and to this day that house still gets brought up every now and then when we see each other. I have many other stories about what has happened in the area, as well as some of the other places I've visited. I recently went back as an adult to revisit my childhood stomping grounds. No one lives in that house, and it looks just as demented and creepy as it did back then. I revisited the creek, the bridge, and some other places that I will write about later. Maybe I'll write about my reunion with that place next time, but for now I can surely say that the eerie feeling I get when I'm there hasn't changed a bit. Holy cow. I can only imagine, like, what that might have been like. And I'm glad to say that I'm fine just imagining it. We've all had those crazy little sleepovers where no matter what you do, freaky stories always pop up. I mean, you'll be sitting there watching TV, watching a movie that has absolutely nothing to do with anything, and we all get to talking and talking. You know, me and my brother are really good for this. You know, we'll sit down and watch a movie, no matter what movie it is, and most probably it's a horror flick, you know. And it just, you know, pretty much it doesn't really fuel anything for us because it's already there, front and center, on the television. But once in a while, you know, you're sitting down having slices of pizza, and then you're talking about other pizza you had in other places. You know, that's always good pizza conversation. And then the beer starts flowing, you know, and people start talking about stuff, bringing up weird stuff, and then everybody has a story to top it. So that's where the circle of conversation goes, you know. And it's pretty cool in a group of people, but, you know, can't imagine, you know, the helplessness that that group of people in that story felt being, you know, just all of them together, bringing the dog in thinking that was going to help them feel safe, and that just, you know, completely, that was also a failure on that part. It just, and the creepiest part about that whole story is the fact that that kid, that was just like his imaginary friend, but not quite imaginary friend, that just weirded me out. So, yeah, I would definitely put this, I like this story as the first narrated story I'd like to put on this show this week. But like I said, my partner in crime, Necronooch, is out there somewhere doing research and thinking the thoughts that he thinks. Some pretty good stuff is going to come out of all that, and probably compile all the information that we've gathered throughout the week, and maybe we'll have something a little more juicy and crunchy for you to sink your teeth into next time. But this has been the Flatland Chronicles, and try to stay asleep tonight.